You ever heard the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia"? Yeah. Carrie, The Exorcist, Jason, Edward. Recognize any of those characters? Any of those other characters up there? Yeah. The movies they were in, perhaps. How about Alfred Hitchcock or Stephen King, Clive Barker, Anne Rice, Bram Stoker? These are just a few of the top selling authors of horror, of fear, of the devil, evil, vampires. And most of these top selling authors' books have been turned into very successful box office movies, right? Horror not your thing? Remember some fairy tales growing up? How about Little Red Riding Hood? How about the Three Little Pigs? They all had wolves in them, didn't they? Yeah. What is it about human nature that makes us need a villain, that to need good to overcome evil? Have you ever gone to a movie and the good guys didn't win and you came out going, that was a horrible show? I feel so cheated. That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, I feel so cheated. We want the good guys to win, don't we? There's a lot of stuff in the middle, particularly in those horror movies, if you've ever seen one. Well, my talk today is The Devil and the Science of Mind. And we're continuing our Practicing the Present series. And so we thought we'd just throw in the devil here. And let's just talk about the devil this morning, okay? Y'all ready for that? Okay. Because we don't talk about it around here, do we? If you've been around this teaching for a while, you know that Satan, the devil, hell, evil, those are things we don't really talk about here. We sometimes say, in the science of mind, we don't have a devil. We don't have that we can threaten you with, right? Because we don't believe in that. Science of mind teaches oneness. It teaches wholeness of being. It teaches that it's all good. It's all God. All of it. All of it. It's unfortunate that theology and fairy tales even have focused on this idea of good and evil, good and bad. There's usually that villain. And the notion of two competing powers, I don't know about you, but it really has gotten to be a very unrealistic belief for me as I see it out in the world reflected back. It's like, really? God is one. We are one. Now, don't get me wrong. I love a good movie. I love a good mystery. I read fiction. I don't only read spiritual books. But today we're not talking about entertainment. We're talking about our relationship with the divine. We're talking about our relationship with the divine and whether or not we still have this underlying hidden belief buried somewhere deep about badness, evil, a devil. Oh, I better, I better balance this out and make sure that just in case there's a hell, I'm okay, right? Just in case they're not right, I better hang on to this a little bit. As I've prayed and meditated and spent time in the silence, it's become more and more clear to me that there's nothing to fear, there's nothing to worry about, and there is nothing outside of myself to blame. So what does that leave me with? Me. It just leaves me with me. And my life is a creation of the thoughts and the beliefs of my mind. And how I choose to interpret what's happening around me based on some set of rules that I have either created or accepted from the world around me. Would you agree? That's what we're left with, isn't it? Now, Ernest Holmes called some of this race consciousness, that we have this set of beliefs that we've all agreed on. And in today's world, we might more politically correctly call that the world consciousness. But it's how we've accepted certain common things, that that's good and that's bad. But then below that, there's this whole spectrum of what's good and what's bad, depending on where we may be in the world and how we were raised in the world. If our teaching says that if I believe in separation, I'm going to experience separation. If I believe in evil, I'm going to experience evil. If I believe in a good and prosperous life, I'm going to experience a good and prosperous life. We've been learning so much about our subconscious these last couple of years. We started really delving into it with the book that we did when we learned that 95% of our thinking throughout the day is subconscious, that we're only truly present and aware and working in our conscious mind about 5% of our day. And so as we do that, we are understanding that small percentage of time that we're fully conscious in our thoughts and our actions. And when we come here and we're in spiritual practice together, we're there, we're focused on it. But it was funny, even this morning as I was reviewing my talk, I realized that I still had two minds going. I was focused on my talk and what I was wanting to say and communicate to you today, and yet there are all these thoughts running around the back of my mind about what was happening here and what was happening there and how this was going to work and how that was going to work. And I was like, wow, quiet. I'm busy here. I got something to focus on. But it's interesting how we can do that. And when it clicks in that we're aware of it, that's the scary part, because it's like, wow, how many times am I not aware and it's happening, right? This is why it's important that we use our willpower and our spiritual discipline to begin to recognize those hidden beliefs, that subconscious that's coming up, and begin to change it. Our spiritual discipline we create by our daily practices, so that we then have the discipline to, when we discover one of these beliefs or something that we need to heal, that we have the focus and the discipline to stay with it and work on it to transformation. Changing our thinking and turning away from these ideas takes a lot of practice. Takes a lot of practice, because this is ingrained in us from childhood stories, old theology, universal worldly beliefs. I was out with some ladies on Friday evening and I was amazed, and I've heard stories this morning about how the negativity in the world is so hard to, it's almost like I need a force field. It's like, whoa. And I'm usually very tolerant, but sometimes it's just like, gosh, can you hear what you're saying? Can you hear what you're saying? Does anybody else have that experience? Yeah. Don't you love being here in this community? Yeah. It's like our spa every Sunday morning. Like, yay. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. He's the author of The Science of Mind that we teach from. And I'm going to tell you what he says about evil and the devil, because he says a lot about it. And he wasn't real respectful about it. Did anybody see the newsletter this week, yesterday? The quote that I had on top, one of my favorites of his, it always makes me giggle. The only devil is in deviled eggs. Can't you hear him saying that? And he states in a lot of his writing that he's got no respect for that whole chain of thinking, and he doesn't mind telling people that he didn't care. Anyway, his quote: "I do not believe in hell, a devil, or damnation, in any future state of punishment, or any of the strange ideas which have been conceived in the minds of morbid people. God does not punish people. There is, however, a law of cause and effect which governs all and which will automatically punish impartially and impersonally if we conflict with the principle of harmony." And this is the crux of the issue, isn't it? This is the crux of the issue of believing that there is a devil, there is hell, evil spirits. When we believe in a supernatural power of evil at work in the world or in our lives, we lose our power because we're now dividing our power, just like we've divided the power in the divine, because we're one with that. So now we're dividing all of it. We give our faith away to a false belief, and what we have faith in manifests, doesn't it? What we focus on expands. What we are thinking about consciously, what we are thinking about subconsciously, that whole tendency of our thinking that Ernest Holmes talks about, that's what outpictures back to us in our lives. And so that's why it's important that we pay attention to what those thoughts are that are coming up for us. Let's go back to the horror movies. Spooky music, right? Spooky music. We know something's coming. We know something's coming. And we begin to tense our body in expectation. What's it going to be? Do I freeze? Do I fly? Do I fight? What do I do? But the spooky music tells us it's coming. The theme from Jaws, oh my gosh. The Exorcist or Halloween, right? All of those are iconic songs that we know something's coming when we hear that. I hear a lot. I have lunch at the stockyards periodically, and some of the patrons that come through have that the gunslinger song thing. Yeah, they have that on their. You have that on your phone? Oh, high noon. Is that what it is? On their phone, and it always triggers that. But the spooky music in horror movies tells us that something's coming. So the thing that we need to recognize in our modern world is like the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood. My grandmother, what big nose you have, right? The wolf was tricky. The wolf was tricky. And that happens in our mind. Our mind can get tricky, can it? It can get real tricky. It shows up as an imposter of wrong and right based on some belief that we may have or what someone's told us or what we've accepted to be true. It shows up as some beliefs or judgment. We can make up negative stories. Oh, that must be it. Oh, that must be what's going on. When in fact, it may not be. I could have used that cartoon again today. You have it? Close by? Okay. This is great for this. I didn't use it last week. It was in the newsletter, but jumping to conclusions. But look at this. That's the stories we make up, right? We jump to conclusions. We make up those stories. Does everybody see it? Yeah, we can jump to those conclusions. This happened to you? How was that mop? Well, I have to tell a tale on myself. I had a great example yesterday as I was preparing my talk. Thank you, Spirit. Valerie called me to talk about our upcoming picnic next month and changing the venue perhaps to exploring a different Scottsdale park. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about the logistics of having someone go and sit there and set up the tables and hold the tables before service. And she said, well, we could go and cover the tables early and put signs on them that they're reserved for us until, at 11:30 when we get there. And I said, oh, I don't know. I said, somebody might take those tablecloths off and throw them away and hide our signs and take over our tables, and we wouldn't have any tables. And she went, really? So thank you, Valerie, for being my angel messenger to bring up that crazy hidden belief, right? That is a belief in evil. That is a belief in wrongdoing. That is a belief in a devil out there that's going to do something. Almost said shame on me. There we go. Another one. That's how it happens, though, isn't it? We have these little sneaky things that come out. but being present to them, recognizing them, grateful for the recognition, and then working through cleaning it up, working through the healing part. If there's any value in believing in an enemy, a devil, evil, any of those things, it is that example. It helps us to stay awake and aware and present to what am I really thinking? What am I really believing? Oh my gosh, who would have, I wouldn't have thought, obviously, I had that hidden belief, but boom, there it was. There it was. So that's why it's important. Joel Goldsmith is the author of our book of the month, and he is talking about healing. And he has a very interesting passage. He says, the spiritual healing principle is that God is love, God is life, and in God there is no darkness at all. He goes on to say something profound. But if we can be made to believe that God tolerates sickness, knows about it, permits it, or is trying to test or punish us with it, we have lost all possibility of ever producing a healing. Breathe that in. That one made me stop and ponder and think about it. Do we believe that God can be or bring forth our illness? Do we believe that's even possible? That we're being tested? Oh, I'm going to send you a test. Do we have that belief? Why would we be tested and strengthened? Are we getting ready for a marathon? We're here to live and love and be and experience life. That belief blocks us from the divine. It blocks our healing. That's what he's telling us. Because we have now separated ourselves from the one when we believe the one could make us sick, right? God doesn't separate from us. We separate by our belief. And that's the beauty of the choice that we've been given, this life that we've been given. We have blocked our good. We have separated God. We have divided that house, our house, by that belief. It is done as we believe. That is the classic teaching. It is done as we believe. Do we believe that the healing is possible? Okay, I have this. Okay, I can heal it. Well, no, God gave it to me and I have to suffer through it. Joel goes on to say, does this mean that God permits all the disease, death, lack, limitation, and wars? Not any more than the principle of mathematics is responsible for our mistakes in arithmetic. Wow. Takes it right back to principle. Right back to principle. 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 2, is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8. See, the mistake. God did it, oh my gosh. No, I did it, didn't I? I misspoke. I did it. We are dealing with universal law. We talked all year last year about grace and how we live in grace, but we block it. And that's what this is relating to, is living in grace and not blocking that grace that we live in. We are more powerful than we know, more powerful than we accept. This is a deep mystical truth that can be shocking to us in 2023 in America, where we've got the best medical system on the planet that convinces us of things. And I'm not poo-pooing medicine. Don't get me wrong there. I'm just saying, let's check our thinking about that. Let's check our thinking about that. Think of the times that we've questioned. I've done it. Why would God give me this? Why would God do this to my parent or my sibling or my friend? Why would God do this? God hasn't done anything, right? Because we live in this magnificent system that has been created for us to live, move, and have our being in complete and total freedom, to use a set of laws and principles to create the life that we desire. It's like we live in a beautiful operating system. God can't twiddle with it, right? We twiddle with our choices. God can't twiddle with the choices. Anytime that we have this conversation, usually in our classes, there's always the question, what about Hitler? Wasn't he evil? What about the horrible things that have happened on our planet? And that question is asked all over the world in our Centers for Spiritual Living. And Ernest Holmes was very, he told us these answers, but he told us throughout The Science of Mind in many of his writings. And I found a more succinct answer. Would you like to hear it? Yeah. There's a book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Who knew? And Rabbi Kushner wrote it. And he states it this way. He says, I believe in God, but I do not believe the same things about him that I did years ago when I was growing up or when I was a theological student. I recognize his limitations. Wow. God's infinite. How can God have limitations? He is limited in what he can do by the laws of nature and by the evolution of human nature and human moral freedom. That's what Ernest said in The Science of Mind. That spirit is having its way through us. It's spirit. It's not the guy in the sky with the beard. It's spirit. It's all around us. It's ether. Ether doesn't exist, but it's all around us. We're the arms and legs. We're the physicality of it. And it's having its life through us as we live through it. Individualized. We're individualized expressions of it. And it gets to experience life through us, through our eyes, through our minds, through our thoughts, through our beliefs, through our crazy decisions, through our loving hearts, through all of it. That is so cool. This is what Holmes was telling us, and it's what he was saying in his quote earlier this morning. We're governed not by supernatural beings, but by universal spiritual and physical laws applied without prejudice, applied equally to all, and through a loving system. The foundation of the system is love. Love and law, that's teaching. The healing work is ours to do to transform our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions and to bring those into alignment. And anytime we have that belief in two powers, we're diluting that. We're putting a block in the way of our oneness with God. The Science of Mind teaches us that we turn away from conditions, right? We focus, we turn towards that which we want to experience more of in our lives. So I'm going to invite us to turn away from evil, turn away from the devil, belief in hell and punishment, turn towards God. Turn towards God. One of my favorite Science of Mind quotes is, stay with the one and never deviate from it. Never leave it for a moment. To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. If you would like to study these principles and practices, I invite you to sign up for our weekly newsletter that comes out on Monday. That's a summation of our talk. It's got the quotes and things with it. And you can sign up online with the QR code or send me an email, sign up in the lobby. All right, number one, Do you believe? Do you believe? Ernest tells us, I do not believe in hell, devil, or damnation. So I invite you this week to write this question in your journal and to reflect on it, answer it every day this week, and get clear about your understanding of what you believe. Where are the devils in your life? Where do you believe in punishment? Number 2, crime and punishment. Ernest tells us that God does not punish people. Write this in your journal and ask yourself, do I believe this is true? Do I believe God punishes or not? Do I think God should punish, particularly the bad people, the really bad ones? That's a deep belief sometimes, isn't it? That they should be punished. Live in harmony is number 3. I invite you to meditate on an event or circumstance from your past or current life and see if you can discover where you have been in conflict with the principle of spiritual harmony in either beliefs, thoughts, or the use of the law of cause and effect. If nothing comes to mind, consider what you were thinking around the events of 9/11 and the subsequent events after that. Or perhaps reflect back on something more current, the 2020 election. What were your thoughts there? Were you living in harmony? When we can look at spiritual laws of the universe and our use of spiritual principles like we look at mathematics, we can begin to anchor in the truth of principle and the application, though, of love. We don't have a need for a devil outside of ourselves. We have no need for anything outside of God other than to realize our own higher truth. Once we realize the higher truth, once we realize the oneness, once we embody and embrace that, we can then begin to take the meaning from the stories, from Little Red Riding Hood, from the Three Pigs, from all of the stories. We can begin to take the meaning, but we're no longer living the reality of the big bad wolf. Let's close with one more quote from Ernest Holmes. The origin of evil is in the human mind, and the belief in devil, hell, purgatory, and limbo has its origin in the human mind and nowhere else. The only hell there is that I ever expect to experience is in my own mind, and I am gradually overcoming it. So it is. Got any questions? I thought you might. Yes, ma'am.
Well, with the devil concept, I'm sorry that my back is to you. With the devil concept, isn't this really our shadow side? And isn't this like I know when I go into my shadow side, a lot of it is, I think it's a devil because I'm a devil, because it's just like, oh my, like I'm victimizing things and I'm not finding the good.
Mhm.
And usually the only way I can get out of that shadow side, it, may take a couple days, it may go quickly, but it's usually coming through and seeing the light.
Mhm.
And the light is usually what brings it out. And isn't that so much like our shadow sides?
Mhm. Sure, absolutely. I think it's more modern terminology for it. It started out with the devil eons, centuries, whatever ago, and we've now named it the shadow. And whatever we call it, it's that which is not the light. It's that which is not the light in our lives. So what is not showing up as the light? Oh, it's my shadow self. It's my judgment. It's my prejudice. My whatever. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm striving every day, all the time, to live in witness consciousness, to be observant of myself, my thoughts, my actions, what they mean, the symbol of them, the cause and effect, all of those things. And so there's a topic of safety, personal safety, that sometimes I think, oh, I should make a plan for personal safety. What if somebody were to attack me or break into my home or something like this? And then I'm like, well, stop thinking that. So I guess I haven't quite come to terms with the conflict around that.
Yeah.
Practicality versus true belief and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's my picnic table example. I mean, it totally is. That's the world that we have been exposed to, is that one that tells us we need to be prepared, we need to be risk averse, we need to be safety conscious. And, if if that's the piece that we need to find, okay. What has worked for me is I'm in the perfect right place at the perfect right time to ensure my complete and total safety and security, and letting go of that fear thought and recognizing it for what it is. Recognizing it for what it is.
But what,
But what about?
but what about, simple practicality like, oh, I don't think I should walk down that dark alley on my own
That's
at night
intuition.
in a certain space.
That's intuition. Say
Okay.
yes. Say yes. Say yes. When we tune in and tap in, we get more of that so that we are guided, intuition guided. Yeah. Who else? Hey, Patrice.
Along that line, one of the things that came into my life many years ago and has served me long before I thought about concepts of science of mind, but I don't know if any of you are familiar with Peace Pilgrim.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, her book dropped into my life probably 20 years ago, and it was at a point when I was changing my thinking from um, traditional fundamentalist religion into things that a direction that had answers, right? And this book fell into my lap. And the thing about Peace Pilgrim was that she reached a place in her life where she put her total trust in divine guidance. And she gave away everything, including her personal identity, put her in her shoes, and started walking back and forth across the country talking about peace. And she did that until she died. I think she did like 36,000 miles back and forth in her remaining years. But reading her, and it was at the time that I was in that place of looking for what is truth, and all of the rest of this need to go away, because I have been living my whole life in fear of everything. Don't do this, don't do that. Somebody thinks it's wrong, going to get hurt. And I started walking that way in my life, and it's the same kind of concept where you're not sitting back of the what if somebody's going to hurt me, what if. Just go with the guidance and the intuition that shows up. Be that, walk in that, and amazing things happen.
Yes, ma'am. Living in grace. That's what it's all about. Living in grace. Beverly.
I've been reading, I think it was January's book. I tend to study instead of just read it. So the book on decision making was that January's
Power
book.
of Decision. Mm-hmm.
And I finally just got through the final chapters of it. But I remember there was a little mantra or a little prayer in it that I put on a little 3x5 card that I use at night. And it was to think about, because God is eternal and omnipresent, then I can sleep safely, peacefully at night. And it just occurred to me as we were talking that we can substitute any verb we want for sleep. That because God is eternal and omnipresent, I can live today in safety. Or I can take my trip in safety, or I can do whatever in safety, peacefulness, and so I just want to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. Good affirmation. Good prayer. One more. Anybody else? One more thing. All right.
Okay. So, in the light of starting to walk in that kind of path, I was guided to take a winter in my off season of work and go down to Costa Rica. I had never been out of the country. I don't speak Spanish, but my spiritual teacher at that time said, you need to go to Costa Rica. Okay. So I was worried going as a single person, single woman by myself to a foreign country where I don't speak the language. And I was going to spend 3 months backpacking around that country at 45. And so I ran into a gentleman who was from there before I went down. And I was asking him, is it safe for a single woman to be trekking around the country by herself? Is there dangers or and it was a danger time in Honduras and Nicaragua all at about that time. And he just looked at me. He said, if you don't anticipate danger, there won't be any.
So it is.
And the amazing things that happened to me on that trip where I could totally have been killed or hurt or whatever, but I trusted the guidance that came to me in that moment, and I was totally protected.
So it is. Yeah. All right. Well, I expected tougher questions. Y'all are good. Y'all are good. All right. Well, shall we pray? Yeah. Thank you all for being here today and participating in that. I do appreciate you. So as we breathe in, just recognize that infinite presence that is always present in, through, and as us. That life, that love, that intelligence and wisdom that is the divine. Recognizing that God is all. There is not God in anything else. It is that which is the created, the creator, and the creation. It is everything, nothing outside of it. And I know that we are one in it, each one of us, an individualized and unique manifestation of this one power, this one presence, this one life. That we're united in this wholeness, here today, present in this room, in the consciousness of this moment, each one that is joining us on live in our live broadcast, and those that are joining us later. There's no separation. There is no time and space in God. It is all present right here now in this present moment, this very breath we take. And so knowing that, I speak my word for and about each of us, knowing that as we embrace and embody living in the grace that God is, recognizing that it's always here for us, that we're always immersed in it, surrounded by it, breathing it in. It beats our hearts. It controls our breathing. It is all that is. And that the only separation there is what we believe to be, the limitations that we place between us and the divine. And so in this moment, those are dissolved and washed away as we embrace fully the light that we are, the light that God is. I know for anyone who has anything on their heart today that they are seeking prayer around, as they lift it into this consciousness of this room and this group, that we lift that prayer into our own conscious knowing of the oneness that this beloved is, this situation is, knowing that if whatever the manifestation is that is being requested, whether it is healing or wholeness or love or prosperity, whatever the need might be, it's already right here. It's already done. And we as a community accept it and say yes. I bless each one of our new members today that has stepped into this community and said yes to the greater expansion of their own lives as spiritual beings, to joining us on the path. And we bless their light as such a contribution to this community and to each one of us as their light illumines us in their brightness, in their sparkle, in their joy. And so it is with a glad heart filled with thanksgiving, joy, that I release this into the action and activity of law, knowing that it's already done. It's already so. And we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.